So the format of our conversation today, we've got some thoughts to share with you around leadership for hybrid teams, and then we're going to move into kind of more of a Q&A style. And this is part of our People Professional series. Dee, do you want to tell people a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So for a really long time, we've been doing monthly, sometimes more than monthly, freebie webinars for participants, people who are often booking our workshops and want to carry on their learning. But we reflected, and actually, often the people who are booking the workshops, the people professionals, often they book their own training last because they're so worried about everyone else. And that's the kind of nature of people professionals. So we wanted a series just for you guys, so you could take some space once a month for your own training and development. And also, since you were the guys who were often booking our workshops for teams and groups of people in your organizations, it gives you a window into our world as well, and a bit of a sneak peek for how we work and how we do things.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dee. So Dee is based, I say based at head office. Dee works remotely. So Dee is part of the head office team at Think Productive, based in the UK. We're obviously a global organisation, so we work in that kind of hybrid way as well. So lots of thoughts and learning there. We've been working that way for a long time. I'm Hayley. I'm one of the Productivity Ninja team at Think Productive. So I lead on deliver, not lead. I'm one of the people who delivers a lot of training around productivity, well-being, meetings, and leadership and management stuff as well. So yeah, we're going to give you a bit of a taster of what we're offering in this hybrid working session. How we do things at Think Productive, we're big fans of this idea of psychology before technology. Technology helps us. It can also make our lives feel a bit more stressful and overwhelming. So we want to kind of manage that relationship really well. We walk our talk. So even among our HQ team, we have people based on different continents. All the stuff we're doing and talking about today are things that Think Productive have been doing for a long, long time. Certainly prior to the pandemic. So lots of learning there that we hope to share with you. And we're going to give you an opportunity in the session today to think about what you're going to take away from today, to just jot down some of the actions that you might want to take. We want today to be a bit of a conversation starter perhaps for you, and some great reflections in the chat around what people are enjoying, what they're missing, that start to get the ball rolling with thinking about the world of hybrid work. So some data from CIPD, quite up-to-date data, thinking about why people might want to offer flexible working. It means the talent pool, the skills that we're able to access are much wider than looking for people in a small geographical area. People are more interested in going to work for businesses that have hybrid working options, rather than kind of requiring somebody's in an office 5 days of the week. And it depends on the job, right? If you're working in a restaurant as a waitress, you need to be there to take the food to the table. You can't work from home. But for a lot of people joining our call, and a lot of our audience, people are working from desks. They're choosing when and where they work from, what tasks they can do next. So this really helps. It gives people more diversity in their team, diversity of thoughts, diversity of ideas, diversity in terms of demographics, a mixture of things, and increases job satisfaction and loyalty. And that's what we all want, right? That's going to be really helpful to your organisation, to have people happy in the work that they're doing and happy with their working arrangements, which can look different for different people. Flexible working has made the headlines quite a lot in recent months and years. I really like this quote, this headline: if you want your team to be successful, stop treating them like kids. I think that's a great one. So thinking about what works for you in your organisation, And that one there in the middle is like chaining your team to their desks from 9 till 5. It's not generally how people are working anymore. And that brings some great opportunities and some challenges as well. I'm going to read this quote out because it's quite a long one. I live in a permanent state of fear. I bought a house in the country and I travel to the office when we're called in for meetings. There is talk that management want us back in the office, but I live too far away now. And that's a real anonymous quote from a participant on one of our workshops last year. And I think that permanent state of fear, that sounds quite strong. That's quite emotive language. But there's so much uncertainty and lack of clarity for this person about what their hybrid, their flexible working is looking like in the future. So we want to be able to give people that clarity and that certainty to the work that they're doing. So within our leadership and hybrid leadership session, we have these 9 stops to hybrid success, and we were a little bit cheeky because me and Dee couldn't decide which of these were our favourite to cover in the session with you today. So for the first people that signed up to the webinar, we sent out a little poll, and we're covering today the top 3 that came up in that, which was meetings, line managing, and avoiding the always on culture. I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed that 4 modes of working didn't make it onto there, because that's also really good content. But our intention is to share with you some of the tips and some of the content from the meetings, avoiding the always on culture, and the line management section. And then we're going to open up to more of a Q&A. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of what this session covers. And we wanted to make it as relevant as we could to you as people professionals, which is why we sent out the poll and got some questions in advance as well, which were great questions. So meetings, avoiding an always on culture, and line managing with the top 3. So I don't know if that's what you would have chosen if you're joining us and you weren't in the first 100 people to respond and book your place, but we've got just over 100 of you here. So hopefully those 3 are going to be useful for everybody on the session today. So let's get stuck into meetings. Meetings is one of my favourite topics. Myself and Graham, who's the founder at Think Productive, co-authored this book, How to Fix Meetings. It was due to come out just as we were going into the first lockdown in 2020. So we went through, before the book had been published, we went through and updated it and made sure that I'd covered online and hybrid meetings as well. So a few pointers then and things we might want to think about, and do come in if there are any kind of meeting specific questions coming up in the chat as well. So one option is to have everyone in the office, right? And it depends on your business. In a global organisation, that's much more logistically challenging than in an organisation that's smaller. And I know that we have organisations of lots of different shapes and sizes represented here today. So my top tip for everyone meeting in the office is, where is it really useful to have those conversations face to face? I'm facilitating an away day on Friday with a charity who are getting their people together for their annual away day. Lots of meaty stuff, decisions to make, coming up with new ideas. I think that's a great way to engage people when they're coming into the office. A lot of your meetings are probably everybody dialing in virtually. And when we're doing that, we want to think about making sure that everybody understands the purpose of the meeting. People have got the same understanding of why they're meeting and what their role is within that. But also thinking about, how do we get everybody contributing? You can see in that picture there, you can see the people's faces. Everybody's got their cameras on. Some people like that, some people don't. So what are the expectations for the virtual meetings in your organisation? One of my clients shared with me, which I thought was fascinating. They said, if we've got a group of 2 or 3, we turn our cameras off because we know we're concentrating on the meeting and we're engaging with each other. But when it's a bigger meeting, we put our cameras on so that people can see that we're doing that, to give themselves a little bit of a rest from what this particular client called her Zoom face. She's like, finally, I've got to have my Zoom face on. so we want to make the contributions equitable, so that if we've got most people dialing in virtually, then maybe all people dial in virtually to try and make sure people are contributing in the same way. And then we've got the hybrid meeting, which I do find trickier. Some people are in the office and some people are dialing in virtually. One of my clients, they have absolutely massive screens, like much bigger than that screen there. And people have said, oh, but when I'm dialing in, I feel like people are scared, like I'm really close up and in their face, and that feels uncomfortable. Maybe I have to do my makeup differently. Dee, you've got a tip around that when people are using Teams?
Yeah, I do. It might not be for everyone, but I discovered from a post on LinkedIn that on Teams there's a Maybelline filter. So if you look on filters in Teams, and you can pick your style of makeup. So if you ever meet with me on Teams, I'll have a very natural face of makeup, but it's not my own and it looks spot on. You can't tell. We've got another TP tip that we use for hybrid meetings that work really well for us. So when we're having a hybrid meeting, some in the room, some online, we nominate one person who's in the room to just keep an eye on the chat, because the person online might not want to interrupt, but they might have a question or something they want to say. So if we nominate someone in the room who's kind of looking out for them and saying, oh, hang on a minute, so-and-so's got a question in the chat or something, it just gives them more of a voice in the room.
It definitely does. And I think it's easier for the person chairing the meeting to see when somebody wants to come in if they're in the room. And I remember doing that for one of our recent Think Productive get-togethers. And Lee and Francis were both typing something in the chat, and I started reading out what they'd said. It's like, hold on a minute, they're there, they can speak for themselves. My role is to let the chair know that this person's got something to say and that they would like to come in. So I think that really helped out the people who were chairing the meeting to not have to be looking at the screen and the chat and the people in the room. I think in all meetings, whether they're virtual, online or in person, hybrid meetings, we expect quite a lot of the chair. So we want to think as meeting participants, what can we do to help the chair make this meeting more effective? If you're turning up to the meeting and you're contributing, you're there because you're trying to help achieve the goal of whatever that meeting might be. So one of the things Graham and I talk about in the book quite a lot is making sure that everybody knows what the purpose of the meeting is, and that shared purpose. Maybe that's visible somewhere for people to see it too. That can help. Okay, I mustn't spend the whole time talking about meetings. I could literally talk about that for hours. I promise not to, because that isn't this session. We're going to hear a quick tip from Elena, who's Managing Director at Think Productive, around meetings.
Remote or hybrid team. Here's a tip for your meetings. IT stands for thoughtful, inclusive, and present. Be thoughtful when you're greeting everyone. Make an effort to find out what time is it in the Philippines when you're calling at 10 in the morning UK time. Be thoughtful in setting the time for your meetings, so it's not always the same person who's having to get up super early or stay up super late. Be inclusive and rotate the chairing so that you're giving different people the opportunity to lead the meeting. Be present. Give the meeting your full attention. Turn off any other tabs, screens, devices. People can tell if your eyeballs are moving, and you can actually see reflections of screens changing in your eyeballs. Make the most of that time that you have together. Final tip, I don't know about you, but I can't help but stare at myself. Just turn off self-view. You'll automatically be more present and focused on the other people's reactions and what they're saying. Good luck.
That's great. And since seeing that video, I've turned off the self view as well, and it is a lot less distracting. One of the other things I want people to think about in terms of meetings, very often we want to use meetings to engage. We want to use meetings to help bring together people's ideas and to problem solve. We don't want to use meetings to share information, because there are other ways of doing that. So in preparation for our get together, this is October 2023, rather than doing a presentation in the room, Elena sent her presentation out in advance. So she's sharing with us ideas to strengthen TP's culture, it says there. So she's sharing those ideas before the meeting so that people in the group who are more reflective thinkers have an opportunity to think about and come up with ideas around that. When I ask people in workshops, like, where are you when you come up with your best ideas? People don't say at their desk or in a meeting. They say they're in the shower, they're washing up, they're walking the dog, they're going, I don't know, rollerblading. They're doing their thing that takes them away from their desk, and that's where they come up with their good ideas. So we want to give people an opportunity to digest the information, to ask questions in advance, and then for the reflective thinkers to bring their ideas to the meeting, and for the people who come up with their ideas through conversation, through bouncing their ideas around with other people, they can do that in the meeting, and we get the best from everyone. It also makes a lot of your meetings shorter. One of my clients who I was doing a lot of work with around meetings and meetings culture, they said, well, actually all of our meetings are about information updates, and they felt quite nervous about getting rid of them. So they then decided they were going to introduce a maximum of 3 information updates in any meeting, and the information update had to have a format. So the first thing in the update was to share why is this relevant to other people? So to give people their hook for listening, what's changed and why has it changed? And they were given a very limited time to answer those 3 questions as part of that information update, and anything else was shared outside of the meeting. So we like that, that's cool. It allows for the collaboration and the discussion to take place when we get together, and for the understanding and just downloading the information, we can do that in our own time. There's different ways to do that. You can do a Loom video, you could do a Zoom video. Dee, you quite like the Cameo in PowerPoint.
Yeah, so this is actually a slide taken from our Microsoft for Productivity Ninjas workshop, but it's so relevant for hybrid leadership as well. Often if you're in the room with someone and you want to talk them through something, well, they're there. But there's a way you can do that in a hybrid world as well with PowerPoint. So if you've got a slide or a few slides and you just want to send it to someone, but you want to send your thoughts and ideas, the kind of ideas that if you were in the same office, you'd just say to them. If you go to record in PowerPoint and then hit the Cameo, you can put your little face at the bottom of it. You can turn off camera and just have your voice if you prefer, but you can then share that virtually and kind of not lose that human touch. Here's the PowerPoint, but I want to tell you about this. So really good for hybrid working as well.
Cool, fantastic. Loads of different ways to do this. So experiment with them, try them out, see what you like using. Try and if you keep it different, you're keeping people on their toes, right? And they're more likely to be engaged. So in terms of avoiding the always on culture, this is always a tricky one, I think. Definitely noticing in workshops that I'm delivering this tension of being available, being present, and also getting your head down and be able to focus and concentrate. So I think that you will have all, I'm sure, heard this idea, culture is what happens when you're not in the room. But actually, I think what's really important is culture is the result of what we do when others are looking. If your senior leaders are responding to emails and messages over the weekend, late into the evening, then people think that's what's expected of them in a world of hybrid working, and it really shouldn't be. We need to have that time to switch off. That helps us to be more productive. It helps us to feel better about what it is that we're doing. And sometimes people say to me, well, but I love my job, I don't mind. But you still need to take a break. Otherwise, you become burnt out, worn out, decision making becomes harder. So thinking about what behaviours are people seeing from the leadership team, from you as a leader, and is there anything there that needs to change, or any conversations that might be useful to have? One of those things might be having a no meetings Wednesday. You might pick a different day of the week, that's fine. I know the Think Productive team at head office don't have any meetings internally in August, and then September, it's a bit of a refresh. Like, what have we missed? What meetings do we want to put back in? Maybe it's an opportunity to jazz some things up and make changes. How do you go about creating a culture where people can really think about their impact and be able to say, do you really need me at this meeting? Do I need to be here? So encouraging people to be able to say, actually, I don't think I have much to add to this agenda, or I haven't got much to say, or can I just come for part of the agenda? We call that making a guest appearance. Taking breaks is really, really important. And I was delivering an online session a couple of weeks ago that in person, it would have been a full 1-day session. So doing those as 2 half-day sessions online. And somebody commented, oh, you made us take a lot of breaks and it made me engage more, even if that's just stepping away from the screen for a few minutes. I've got one client who's trying to teach herself to juggle. So every hour she's stepping away from the computer for a couple of minutes and having a go at juggling, which involves a lot of movement because she ends up chasing those balls around because she's not quite nailed it yet.
Hayley, do you think in hybrid environment people feel more scared to take proper breaks, or they're scared of being offline for an hour for lunch because they're not visible?
Yeah, definitely. And I had somebody on a workshop last week actually who said, well, I work part-time and I work from home, so I feel like I've got to be at my desk for every single minute. And her colleagues were saying to her, but for some of us who are in the office sometimes, we'll have a chat, we'll go and get a cup of tea and a coffee, and you should do the same.
Yeah.
I think sometimes those times where you feel that you're too busy and you can't step away are the times where it's most important to do that. Might not be the time you necessarily need to take a 2-hour lunch break and go to the gym at lunchtime. But that stepping away helps to give us perspective. When we move away from our desks, our brain can kind of start to filter things, switch off, relax, and then you come back to it fresher. Yeah, that's a word. So I think there is, in a lot of organisations, I'm hearing a lot about guilt and a lot of, it doesn't feel right to take a break. You know, what if my manager emails me? So it's like, well, then yeah, that's okay. And if you're feeling it's not okay, that's a conversation to be having as well. To make sure you're giving people permission to take breaks. And that thing around, you know, if you're a leader in an organisation, being quite clear, you know, I'm taking a lunch break now, because then people know that they're expected to do that too.
Do you know, I got a message today on Slack from my line manager because she'd noticed I hadn't taken a lunch break today. And actually I'm taking it at 3 o'clock because I need to go somewhere to a box office. But the point is, she checked, like she'd realized you've been online all the way through when everyone else is taking their lunch break. Have you taken a break? Which was really nice to have that check-in.
Yes, and I can see Elena's just posted in the chat there. Taking breaks is actually reviving, not skiving. And she's coined that. She's like, Elena's getting that trademarked. So that's cool. Maybe that could be the title of your next book, Elena. A lot of this is about culture though, right? We're talking about what people see. We're talking about how people behave around breaks. So freedom and responsibility to make choices. We want to create a culture where that's okay, where people are encouraged to take ownership of their goals, their work, their hours, that, you know, what they're doing. Being accountable, like what does that look like? It's not checking in every 10 minutes, but it is being clear on what is it we're trying to achieve, what are the outcomes, what are the outputs that we're looking for. And being responsible for negotiating and communicating around those things. And if you've got those 3 ingredients, you're going to be working towards having a really good and healthy culture around this stuff. Managing freedom and responsibility. This idea that, you know, we want to give people freedom and responsibility. We don't want to be micromanaging people. That's exhausting. And it's not very nice to be on the receiving end of it either. Things that help us to do that are just putting really clear boundaries in place. I remember coming back from my maternity leave in my previous job about 10 years ago, and somebody said, oh, you know, such and such has been working from home, but we called her and she couldn't chat because she was in the GP surgery. You need to have a word. And it was like, okay, but she was doing that in her lunch break and I trust her to make up the hours. Like, that's okay. But the boundaries hadn't been clear around what that person's working from home looked like. People thought she was going to be available to answer their calls within a certain time frame, and she wasn't that day, and that caused a bit of disagreement. So we want to be able to have ways to track projects. Are people on track with the things that they're due to be delivering? And I think one of the great questions that we had in advance was around one-to-ones, and how do we track whether people are doing things or not. And I think a way to do that in your one-to-ones with people is, rather than micromanaging them and checking in on every aspect of the project, you know, what's on track? What do you need help with? Are there any, you know, what are the chances of this all being delivered on time? Where might things be going wrong? What can we do to help you? Involving the person whose one-to-one it is in setting that agenda, so that they get to choose what they want to talk about. Let's give them the responsibility and the freedom to choose what is helpful to discuss and explore around that project work. And there isn't space for passengers, right? We don't want to be this idea that, you know, maybe the team are carrying someone, maybe somebody's not pulling their weight. If there's a feeling that that's what's going on, that needs to be explored. We need to make those conversations kind and fair, but we need to explore what's going on. We need to be able to be quite open and honest about that and ask questions to find out more information. So approaching that with curiosity, and you know, what's going on here? Is everybody pulling their weight? Are we all working towards these same goals? So encouraging people to set goals for yourselves in your own work. So my goals today, I've got like the various meetings I've had on a piece of paper, and then the 3 tasks that I really have to get done are written on there as well. And once those tasks are done, I can go back into my second brain and have a look and see what else it is that I'm going to get done. And that helps me in my work, regardless of where I'm working from, actually. That's what I tend to do. But if you're working as part of a team, some people might respond well to that external accountability and want to share their daily goals and share their successes. Other people might find that quite a turn off. So find out what it is that your team need and want from you in relation to that kind of goal setting. I've got some more data for you around flexibility and hybrid working, evidence to show that that's increasing profitability, people reporting improved well-being. And there were lots of conversations right at the beginning when we said to people, what's great about hybrid working, what you're struggling with. A lot of the things that people were enjoying were there's well-being things, like, you know, missing out on the commute, having time to go to the gym, go for a walk, whatever it might be. So turnover is impacted as well. Organisations with less flexible and hybrid working experiencing higher staff turnover and lower staff turnover in organisations where people have got more options for hybrid working.
Hayley, we had a really interesting question.
Awesome.
Someone submitted about they personally are a believer in hybrid working, but they see themselves as the kind of stuck in the middle between the organisation and all the teams that they support as people professionals. And that's tricky, isn't it? When the people professionals are often the people who are kind of in the middle of this, and they're trying to reassure the organisation that people are still doing what they need to do and working in a really great way and achieving all their goals, while at the same time supporting leaders, middle leaders, to lead in a hybrid world as well.
And I'm talking to lots of middle leaders at the moment who are saying, oh, you know, I really believe in hybrid working and offering people flexibility. But, you know, there's instruction from management further up the organisation that we need to be getting people into the office. And that is tricky. It depends what the rationale and the motivation is for that. And often it's lack of trust. So I think there are some wider conversations to have there. And that's certainly something that I think is really important to get out in the open. Particularly, you know, we know that staff retention is better where people have got that flexibility. We know that work satisfaction and therefore the quality of the work is likely to be better. Working from home doesn't work for everybody. You know, for some people, actually, they want to come into the office because of who's at home, or they haven't got the space at home, or they just prefer it. It's about personal preference. So I think opening up those conversations to really understand what the concerns and the challenges might be can be helpful. Absolutely. So a couple of things that people might want to reflect on. What are the expectations around responsiveness and availability for you and your team? Do they enable you to make space for the work that matters? And what might you need to do or change to get some clarification around some of this? So in our longer workshops, we will be putting people into breakout rooms to discuss and explore some of these questions. But for today, inviting you to maybe note down those questions, maybe take a screenshot and have a little think about that outside of the session. I think traditionally managers have had a bit of a need for control, monitoring, mytopia, getting into that nitty gritty and detail, while employees worry about that sense of being over connected and over communicating. That's why people are being copied into every single email that somebody sends and that kind of stuff. And that just makes it all very noisy, more stressful. So we want to work towards leading people, giving control and building trust. Okay, we're going to talk about line management in the next 5 minutes, and then we're going to open up for some more of those questions. And thank you for feeding some of them in as we go, Dee. That's really helpful. So keep those coming. So establishing expectations and having really clear goals, that's important in any kind of line management relationship, but maybe even more important when we're working in a hybrid world. So at Think Productive, our team do a 4-day week. Clients aren't affected. They are effective, but they're not affected but by that, because we're always open to clients Monday to Friday, and the HQ team kind of rotates what that looks like. And that's valuable to us as an organisation, because we believe that rest and recuperation are important for our productivity. So taking that time out has a really positive impact. Our stance on working late, like sometimes that's okay, but we know that it's not sustainable in the long term. So it's not something that we expect. I had a client about 6 months ago, and they called me. It was literally about 10 to 5 on a Friday. And somebody said, oh, I've got a meeting at 8:30 on Monday morning. Could you put together a proposal for me over the weekend? So I said, well, I can send you our brochure, but I'm not going to put an individual proposal together over the weekend. And I kind of knew that HQ team would be okay with that, and I wasn't going to get into trouble. I said, I can have that to you by the end of the day on Monday. And that was okay in the end. But it was unusual to be asked to do something over the weekend. And we talked about breaks already. Regular check-ins, those one-to-ones are really important. And I know we had quite a few questions submitted in advance about that. Really encouraging the agenda for those one-to-ones to be collaborative. So it's not the person who's the manager who's always saying, this is what we have to talk about in those sessions. That should be a two-way thing. The importance of being flexible. People work differently. Like for me, working in an open plan office environment, I don't think I could do that anymore. I've done that in the past. I like working from home. I can find it much easier to concentrate, but that doesn't work for everyone. And we need to be respectful of that and think about what works for different people. Maintaining that trust and open communication is key to that. Thinking about different ways to recognise achievements. These are some extracts from our Slack channel. Oh, Dave, we get a mention there. That's nice. But making sure that there are ways to recognise when people have done something well, that doesn't create more noise and work for people, but just being able to share that, that's really nice.
And Hayley, that doesn't happen by accident, does it?
No.
In a hybrid world, you have to set up a mechanism for people to remember to say thank you. So we have a kudos channel on Slack, and that kind of gives us permission and helps us remember to, because sometimes in a hybrid world, you don't see each other regularly enough, and you think, oh, I'll thank them when I see them, and that could be ages.
Yeah, and then they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so we try to be really proactive around making sure that stuff's shared on there quite frequently. We've got 5 or 6 minutes left. So before we talk about the rest of the People Professional series, what questions have we got, Dee?
So we had, oh, let me move it over to my other monitor. We had how to How to ensure a sense of belonging with reduced time together in the office. I thought that was a lovely question.
Yeah, and I think we do a lot of that at Think Productive on Slack. We have our kudos channel where people can give a congratulations and a well done. We have a client feedback channel where things that are shared on evaluations from workshops are shared and posted. We have our mistakes channel where we're encouraged to share our mistakes and what learning there might be from those. And that's a conversation rather than a confession, I think, so that we can collaboratively think about what do we learn from that. And then the other channel we have is our Wellbeing channel. And somebody always posts on there on a Tuesday, like we have a Tuesday check-in. And you can write an essay and tell people lots of things about what's going on for you at that point in time. You can not respond, you can share an emoji, it could be one word. It's just a way of staying connected and understanding what's going on for other people. And if you're working in an office and you saw each other every day, oh, how are you? And it's kind of a weekly equivalent of that, checking in with people.
And Hayley, I know in the full 3-hour leading hybrid teams workshop, we would cover all 9 of the stops.
Absolutely.
And my favourite stop is onboarding. So at the point of onboarding, when I was onboarded 2 years ago to TP, what I really loved was just the absolute clarity about what remote working means for us, what equipment I'm entitled to, how I get it, how many meetups we have in person a year, how they're put on the calendar every year as a recurring meeting. So there's no excuses. I know we're going to Brighton or London and we're meeting up in those few days. And that absolute clarity is so important. And we hear so much in our workshops where with hybrid participants and they're saying they're just not sure, like they're invited to meetings in the office that are last minute, and that kind of onboarding bit, just making it really clear, this is our hybrid working or flexible working manifesto. This is how we do it. This is how you apply for it. This is what it looks like. And actually what's really nice about the 3-hour workshop is you build that manifesto. So you think about all the different elements, and by the end of it, you've got a really good draft document to take back to your organisation just to get that clarity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that sense of belonging, Elena has shared in the chat around the daily 10-minute huddle, helping to create that sense of belonging. We've also got a great question there around employees temporarily working internationally. So my neighbour, for example, a lot of her family live in India. So she took a 2-week holiday to go to India. She was off, she was not working. She enjoyed hanging out with her family, meeting people, catching up. But then she stayed for another month and worked in India. But then she could see her family and her friends in the evenings and in the weekend, but she still got her job done. And I know some of the team at HQ have done similar things. So thank you for that question, Victoria. Anything else, Dee, that's come up from questions either submitted in advance or anything that we're pulling out from in the chat? I can't see that anybody's submitted any questions in the kind of more formal Q&A space.
Sarah's mentioned just being aware of tax implications for people working abroad, and I feel like that's part of your onboarding expectations. Like, make it clear we allow people to work from another location up to X many days a year, and this is how you let us know you're doing it. So it's not a secret. You're not like hiding the fact that you're in another country. It's just part of the way of working. And the more I think we formalize these kind of things, the less of a bad reputation hybrid working will have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's some really useful kind of thoughts there in the chat around, explaining how many days a year people can do that without there being tax implications and all that other kind of good stuff. Fantastic. Any other questions?
Yep, we've had, I'm trying to look for one that we haven't. Lots of them are the same, like sense of belonging, interpersonal connectivity. We've kind of spoke about that. how do we address online and in-person audience effectively? So we've given some ideas for that.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Absolutely. So as Dee said, we've looked at 3 out of 9 stops around hybrid working. And interesting, Dee, sad times, neither of our favourites got covered.
No.
But you know, we were giving people what they wanted. So if that's something you are interested in looking at for you and your team or other teams within your organisation, then the best next step is to book in a call with Dee. And I know that Dee's going to put her details for you to do that into the chat in a moment. Anything else you want to say on that before I move on to the next slide, Dee?
No, I'll put my calendar link in there, then it's...
Cool. Jennifer was intrigued about our favourites and why. Mine's the 4 modes of working, because I think it's probably just cements for me some of the different ways that you can work with people and interact together or do your solo work in a group, and just gives people a bit more clarity about what mode am I in and being a bit more deliberate about that mode and that intention.
my favourite's the onboarding section, because it does the kind of paperwork stuff, like what should you be sharing with people, but it also has some really lovely ideas. So for example, it suggests that if someone is being onboarded into a hybrid team, there should be 2 tours. There should be an office tour and an online tour, which I think are both lovely, a really nice touch, and they're physically on your calendar in your first week. And the online tour is this is where we meet in Teams. This is how we use Teams, or this is how we meet on Zoom. And this is where we store and share documents online. So I really like all of those ideas. There's also some really nice ideas about supporting people with their workstation when they're at home as well, and some nice ideas to kind of make sure people have what they need at home. It's all the logistic stuff.
Yeah, that stuff's all really important. And I think it's not one thing, right? There's not one solution to making hybrid work. It's about having lots of different things. So
Yeah.
Dee and I are going to stick around. If you've got further questions, do please share them. But before you go, a couple of things. In our People Professional series, between now and Christmas, we have another 3 sessions for you. Microsoft Mastery for People Professionals, Inbox Mastery, and Growth Feedback. So lots of really good stuff there, and dates for you to start adding to your calendar. And Dee, anything to add? Anything else I was supposed to say there that I haven't yet?
No, just please do share these links with other people professionals in your network. We'd love to meet new people and welcome more people into our community.
We've got some webinars coming up that aren't specifically for people professionals, so you can invite your teams to these. We've got Thriving Teams in Tricky Times, which is always a bit of a tongue twister. I have to say that one really slowly. That's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And then early in October, Graham, who's the founder at Think Productive, is launching his new book, Kind, The Quiet Power of Kindness at Work. So lots of stuff coming out around that in the next few weeks. But if you're interested in speaking to us about some workshops for you, for your team, for people in your organisation, whether that's around productivity, management and leadership, or any of the other wide variety of things that we're doing, you've got Dee's contact details there. And Dee has shared in the chat a link on how to book a session with her.
And just as an extra freebie, I thought maybe anyone who books in just a chat, you know, tell me about what's going on in your organisation with your people, and ask any questions you have about our workshops and how we might be able to help. And then I'll send you one of our books as well, just to give you an extra peek into our philosophy and our ways of thinking. And we've got quite a few books, so you can take your pick. And that's same for anyone watching the recording as well. If you just reference this in your meeting invite, then I'll know to send you a book.
And John said, could these other options be explored in a future webinar? Well, yes, John, we can come and deliver that for you and your people, and then you'll get the full 9 stops around leading hybrid teams. So that's cool. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any questions that we haven't picked up yet. If you would like to stick around for us to answer any questions, we're going to stop the recording in a moment and we can answer those questions. Otherwise, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.